All right, here we go. Number 2 of our podcast, Tea Time with Timus. It's a entirely new thing that I am doing, and I'm really excited. And yeah, as you can see, there's something very, very different about what we're doing. And it's obviously clear, unedited skits that I am going to do from now on. But there's also another thing. I have a green screen. That's right. I've never had a green screen before, and it's going to be very interesting working with one from this point forward. And yeah, I'm very excited. The background might change, it might not. I'm trying to still tweak with the inconsistencies in lighting and all that, so bear with me. But have some things to talk about today, and it's quite interesting. But a lot of these Tea Time with Timus videos will be talking about the fandom, a lot of the nuances of it, I suppose. But today will be more about what makes a furry. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so a furry can mean many things, and in my opinion, everyone has their different opinions of what a furry is, but I feel like there's a lot of people who say, well, a furry is supposed to be this, or a furry is supposed to be that, and it's this and that and that, and you need to have these sort of qualifications to be a furry. Honestly, I think being a furry is whatever you think it means to you. It's a personal definition, in my opinion. Now, what do I mean by this? And just a little disclaimer, I'm not trying to gatekeep. I'm not trying to say, well, this is how it's supposed to be done. I'm just giving you a little insight on how maybe you might feel what a furry is, because I already know what I think a furry is. But just to give you a sort of glimpse into what it might be, we're going to start with some things that we can delve into what actually a furry is. Okay, so the first one is, this is a general definition of the furry fandom, okay? This is just like generalization of our fandom in general. So, according to Wikipedia, the furry fandom is a subculture interested in anthropomorphic animal characters. Some examples of anthropomorphic attributes include exhibiting human intelligence and facial expressions, speaking, walking on two legs, and wearing clothes. The term furry fandom is also used to refer to the community of people who gather on the internet and its furry conventions. Okay? That is, by definition, in my opinion, the sort of generalized definition of what is a furry. But there are many, many ways you can sort of like specify that. And it's going to be different for a lot of people, because there's a lot of subgenres within the fandom, I feel, and outside of the fandom. Because if you walk down the street, okay, and you're watching a furry cartoon, most people who are not in the fandom are going to assume you're watching a cartoon. Or it's probably like a sports mascot that they've never heard of before, like a team from New Zealand or something. I don't know. But in any case, that's how usually it goes. You'll see somebody wearing a tail, they'll be like, oh, it's a costume, it's a Halloween costume. They're probably wearing it because they like tails and whatever. You won't think much of it. But that's typically what we're working for, okay? So, going back to this page, if I can get back to it. These bloody hotkeys. Yeah, so basically, when you think of a furry, this is typically like what most people would think of when it comes to what a furry is. And they're not wrong. I feel like furries are like these characters that people make up, obviously, for themselves. In my opinion, it's a representation of the animal, what they would think they would be, on two legs and wearing clothes, and their own personality, their own attributes. So, yeah, that's sort of like how I see it. But what about the people who aren't exactly in the fandom and probably don't know what a furry is? And I see this word get pushed all the time with people who wear cat ears and cat tails, or they're like in the anime community, and people are sort of just like throwing these furry names around them, like, oh, you're wearing cat ears and cat tails, so you must be a furry. And I honestly don't think that's what it is, okay? And it's different. It's It's very different for everybody. But most of these people probably aren't furry and they wouldn't consider it furry. Now, me personally, I've seen plenty of people at furry conventions wearing cat ears and cat tails, and they consider themselves furries. So, where would they draw that line where they consider them furries, and yet you have other people outside the community who wear the exact same thing, but they don't know what a furry is or they don't consider themselves furry. So it really depends on the individual person. And it just like, I feel like if you're somebody who's just really passionate about one community, it's gonna be different than like being a furry, because I feel like I don't look at this, what you're seeing on my screen, as furry. I honestly don't. There's plenty of people like this who wear things like this and they're not essentially furry. It's just, and I get it. I get why people think it's furry, but personally, me speaking, these people don't probably consider themselves furry, even though you would see something like this and you would say, okay, well, they're in the same category as something like this, if this page will load. And this is on Amazon. Do not buy this. This is a scam. I just want to say right now, this is a scam. Do not buy this. Do not buy this. This is a scam. But let me get that out of here. Okay, so basically, there's people who say like this is the same category of furry as something like this, and that's like where I have to disagree. But again, it's different for everybody, because you go around and you go to different communities and fandoms, and you're sort of like, well, I'm wearing cat ears, so I'm not a furry and I don't consider myself, so I just like wearing them, or they're part of my past personality. So I think until that person looks at themselves and says, hey, I like anthropomorphic characters, and I consider myself a furry, and I'm part of the community, and I do all this, I think that's where the definition changes. So if somebody is wearing cat ears and cat tails, it's really different then, because they're now part of our community, and they know they're part of our community, if that makes any sense. So I just feel like rambling on, but I just feel like, yeah, somebody's wearing cat ears and cat tail, I don't think that necessarily makes them a furry, unless they actually say that they're part of the community and they're specifically, a furry. I think that's what we're trying to get at when we look at stuff like this. But that out of the way, what about Nick Wilde or other anthropomorphic characters like Bugs Bunny? Do we consider them a furry? Can we honestly sit here and say that this character that has been around since the 40s, 30s, whenever Bugs Bunny was made, is in the same category as something like this? Personally, I don't think so. I don't think you can honestly, because what I believe, and this is just me, is that these characters weren't made by somebody to represent themselves. And sure, there might be artists who create their own cartoon characters and think, hey, that's a reflection of myself in some aspect. I don't think it's really like in the same vein as someone like me or someone else who makes their own character ref sheet, and says, hey, this is my character that I have associated with the furry fandom. So I think, in many ways, and this is just me, like I said, my opinion, I don't think Nick Wilde or Bugs Bunny or any other character is a furry unless they were made by a furry specifically for the furry fandom. But this is my opinion. There are furries out there who genuinely believe that Bugs Bunny is a furry, that Nick Wilde is a furry, and you'll see furry art of Nick Wilde, furry art of Bugs Bunny, and all these other characters all over the fandom. You'll see it at convention spaces, you'll see them on sale and everything. So, that line is sort of crossed because they're anthropomorphic characters, and they're characters that we associate with because they're anthropomorphic animals. So it's kind of like a blurred line almost, where you can say, well, they're not furries because they weren't made by furry for furries, and yet we have attached them to our community and sort of made them furry. So I kind of understand where people go with when they say, "Oh, Nick Wilde's a furry," and it's part of that umbrella. So at one point, do you sort of like say, okay, well, a furry is this and a furry is that? So yeah, that's sort of like what I'm trying to get from. So it's really hard. It's like it's really difficult to sort of make those definitions for what a furry is when we don't exactly know what a furry is. If we do, it's our own interpretations of what a furry is. Most of us know generally what a furry is because we're furries ourselves. But it's like what I say. And I've talked to many people who are not in the fandom about whether Nick Wilde is a furry, and a lot of them say no. So, but then you talk to a lot of furries and they consider Nick Wilde to be a furry. So, it really is. I feel like what most people think is that once that character is part of our fandom, they're basically furry. So, yeah, so I kind of get where they're coming from. I really do. So, anyway, what else do we have? Okay, so Nick Wilde and Bugs Bunny aren't necessarily furries, but they could be furries, but they are furries, but they're not furries. So different opinions, obviously. So yeah, it's very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. But that was my intro you saw, by the way. Okay, so what about this? Fursuits. So fursuits, as you know, probably, they're really the staple, I guess, of the furry fandom. When you think of furries, you probably think of fursuits, especially if you're not in the fandom. When you are in the fandom, that sort of generalization disintegrates, becomes more specific. And I noticed that as a furry. I've been in this fandom for more than a decade, so I can say with absolute certainty, when you've been in the fandom and you're in the fandom, that sort of like generalization of like, oh, this is a furry, right? This is definitely, this is 100% without a doubt a furry, and this is what I think of when I think of what a furry is. And I understand that. I do. So I think fursuits definitely, they're definitely what most people think of a furry. When you see me right now, you probably think I'm a furry. But there's people out there who say, oh, that's just a mascot costume, right? He's just wearing that for entertainment purposes or whatever. Maybe it belonged to like a theme park, right? And there's stuff like that. So honestly, and I want to make this point right now, if I can search it, because I forgot to search it. Oh, that just happened. Oh, we had a little emergency there. Okay. Just give me a second. I'm still trying to figure out the lighting. The lighting here. Okay, alright. Just give me a second. We're gonna figure this out. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. Okay, and we are back. Okay, so that just happened. And I can see that my little green screen is kinda... Okay. Oh, yeah, it's kinda messed up a bit. That is strange. Although I think I know why. It's probably not good. Anyway, we're gonna go on with the show. We're getting sidetracked a bit. Okay, so yeah, so mascot costumes. What are they? And would I consider them to be furries? Personally, I wouldn't. And obviously, there's a clear cut with it, because if you see something like this tiger costume, right? Oh, actually, no, that's a bad. Okay, perfect. Mickey Mouse. Okay, Mickey Mouse. Are they really? Is this really a fursuit? Like, when you look at this, would you consider that to be a fursuit? Something like this. Look at that. By God. Oh my goodness, look at that. That is terrifying. $200 for that. That is quite terrifying. Okay. You know, are they really a fursuit when you look at something like this? If it can load. My internet is... It's slow. Okay, we're not gonna do that. But anyway, you kind of get where I'm going with. It's just... Most people will look at Mickey Mouse at a theme park and say, that's not a fursuit, that's not a furry, that's just some guy in a costume there to, you know, make everything happier and the happiest place on earth. I don't know. You know, it's kind of like that line, and I've had people say that, like, Mickey Mouse costume is a fursuit, or like it is, like, in many ways a furry. And I just feel like, where do we draw that line that says Mickey Mouse is a furry and the costumes that people wear at theme parks are fursuits? Now, I don't know. Nobody knows. I mean, people, like I said, make generalizations of what they think makes a furry, and that's just sort of what it is, and we'll just take it from there. Honestly, I feel like if we're gonna be a fandom, there should be, like, sort of just a generalized definition of what a furry is, and I think we've got that. You know, we furries understand, like, what it is, and a lot of us will have different opinions on what the furry fandom is, and I think that's what's beautiful about our community, is that we all have our definitions of what is a furry. Some people might not think this is a fursuit, you know. There's people who will think, you know, there's people who think that they were born the wrong species, and they're called Therians, and they think that, you know, they're an animal spirit trapped in a human's body, or this and that, and I'm probably generalizing it, but I'm trying not to. But, you know, there's people out there who think Nick Wilde is a furry. There's people like me who think they're not a furry. So I think to take away from this show is that no matter what you think a furry is, I think as long as you know what it means to you, that's what matters. So for me, being a furry is you're part of a community that shares similar interests to you, shares the interest of anthropomorphic animals, of dressing up as an anthropomorphic animal, and going to conventions. That's what I think what a furry is. But my definition is completely different to what someone else might have. But yes, that's what I think maybe we should do. And you know, like I said, I'm not trying to gatekeep or anything, but I'm just trying to say that we all have opinions, and I think they're all valid. That's the most important part of it, okay? But anyway, we're gonna end the show now. So yeah, it was nice talking to all of you, and I will see you all in the next video. I hope you have a great day, okay? Mwah. Bye, everyone. Oh, and before I leave, this is Tim Tam. He's my little fox companion. He's half fox, half tiger. Reason why he has spots. So yeah, the both of us say goodbye and farewell, okay? Okay, bye everyone. Have a great day. Bye.